Hi, this is Mike Darda in sunny Cape Coral and Fort Myers, Florida, and we're talking today about effective pre-qualifying. So the first question that everyone asks me about pre-qualifying is, when do you do it? And the answer is immediately after setting the appointment on the same call. And why is that important? Well, you're in rapport. They already like you. They trust you enough to set an appointment. They've already talked to you for a significant amount of time. And it's a natural progression into the pre-qual script. Now, the way you lead into it is simple. You just say, hey, I got a couple really important questions to ask you before we meet. Do you have a quick moment for me? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, sure. And then you just go into the pre-qualification script. Once in a while, they say, you know what, I don't have time now. And then you can just say, well, great, I understand, no problem. When would be a better time to call you just so I can get some important questions answered to be prepared for our meeting? And they'll give you a time and you go from there. So the reason also it's important to do it then is people are hard to reach on the phone these days. And especially if you're calling an expired, they're going to be screening their calls and you may not get another chance to do a pre-qual before you go to the appointment. So knock it out once you set the appointment. So we're going to go through the questions on the pre-qual script, and I'm going to explain why each one has value and is important to not eliminate from the pre-qualification script. So here is the first question. If what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me when I come out Tuesday at 3? So the 3 answers you're going to get there is yes, which is yes, great, we've got a good qualified appointment. Or you might get a, well, possibly, or you might get a no. Well, the possibly just means, okay, this is a legitimate listing appointment. We just have to do a little more probing onto what their hesitation is. If it's a no, we really got to pay attention on that one because there may be a condition here that would warn us not to waste our time going. So let's move on further and we'll get the answers to those questions from the rest of them. Which the second one is, would you like to meet at my office and see my operation, or do you prefer to meet at the property? This is a good one if the house is close by to your office and if they're willing to meet you at the office, and several will just by asking that question. Those are the best ones because there's no distractions on the presentation. You don't have to waste your time driving around. And if they're serious enough to come to your office, odds are pretty good that they're serious enough to sign a listing with you. Next question. Where are you moving to? All right. So you probably already got the answer to that from your setting the appointment, but if you don't, let's make sure we ask it again and go a level deeper, and that is, why are you moving there? So it's important to know this because that will give you a glimpse into their motivation. It will help you understand how best to assist them in this move. The next question is, how soon do you have to be there? Now, this is a key question to uncover their motivation. If they've got an exact date they got to be out of there by, great. They might tell you like yesterday or ASAP, great. We've got a motivated seller. Sometimes they tell you, well, really there's no time we have to move by and we don't have any kind of a deadline. There's no hurry here. Now, all the red flags should be going up on that one. So one way I try to test it is I ask a follow-up question, and that is, well, in the perfect world, how soon would you like to have it sold? And that will help create an artificial deadline and see if they're motivated. And so if they absolutely have no motivation to sell, like they don't have a definite reason and a definite time, that may not be an appointment you want to waste your time with, because the odds are they may not price it right in that case. Next question I like to ask, it's a one that I don't think's in the Mike Ferry script, but I added in here. If I sell your home in the next 30 days, would that pose a problem for you? So what that's going to do is 2 things. It's going to let you know, can they move quickly should you get a fast sale on the home? And it also may let you know if there's a condition that they can't move for an extended period of time, which may be something that you might not want to go on. So I also think it helps add a little confidence for the seller, thinking, wow, this person is really confident they can sell my home quickly. Now, another question in the script is, what would happen if your home did not sell? So why would you want to ask this? Again, it's a motivation revealing question. They're going to say, oh, no, it has to sell. We've got to have this wrapped up by such and such date. In which case, yes, we got a motivated seller. They might say, well, no big deal. We can just stay here. It's not a problem. Again, red flags, maybe if they're not willing to price it right, you might not want to go on that one. They may say, well, we'll just rent it out. Okay, just make yourself a note so you can be ready to handle that possible objection when you get to the appointment. Next question. Are you interviewing other agents? Now, you're going to get a lot of responses to this. You might get no, which is great. That means you have a really good shot at getting that listing. They might say, yes, we are interviewing other agents, in which case you got to dig deeper. So what I like to ask there is, oh, that's terrific. I'm thrilled to be among your considerations. When are the other interviews scheduled? And at that point, they're going to tell you they either have one, scheduled after you, one before you, whatever they say. At least you know the pecking order, where you are in the presentation lineup. If you're toward the end, odds are better you're going to get it because they often don't want to bother meeting with the other agents again and have them come back. So if you're anywhere in that lineup, of course, you want to put together a strong presentation to blow away the competition. So now you know you're up against other agents. Another strategy is to figure out who you're up against. And there's two ways to do this. One is I just like to, simply ask. I just say, I've been selling real estate here for 31 years. I know almost every agent in town. Who else are you considering interviewing? You'd be surprised how often they just cough up the names and companies with just that question. If they're a little bit more challenging prospect, you might say, some of my sellers have appreciated it when I brought my track record of what I've sold in the neighborhood with me to the appointment. Would you find that helpful? Oh, yeah, that'd be great. They never say no. And then you can say, well, and some of my sellers have found it helpful if I brought the track records of the other agents they're interviewing so that they can do a side-by-side comparison. Would you find that helpful as well? And of course, if they say yes, it's a natural lead-in. Now they got to give you the names. So, oh, that's perfect. So I can prepare the comparison. Who else are you considering interviewing? And again, you get the names and number or names and companies of the agents you're working against. Now, if they can't come up with the name or the company of the agent because they can't remember it, odds are that's probably not a real strong contender for the listing. And sometimes they just say this to let you know or back off your sales pressure when you're there. So good stuff to know going into the appointment. And now another question is, okay, so now you got the names. What are you going to do about that? Well, I like to print off a track record of my track record, and I like to print off the track record of the agents that they're talking to besides me. And you'll often find those agents may have surprisingly few sales. It's common. I run into agents that they're interviewing that may have only, less than 10 sales in a year, maybe less than 4 sales in a year, sometimes none. So wouldn't that be good information to show the seller and tilt the scales in your favor? Next question is, when I see you, how much did you want to list your home for? Now, this is one that more often than not, sellers like to play games with you. Oh, I don't want to say, I would rather you come up with the number. Okay, I want your opinion. That's the kind of stuff you typically get. So you have a follow-up question here. As a professional agent, I study homes and prices every day. Therefore, I assume you'll list with me at the price that would cause it to sell, correct? So what's the price you can't go below? Now, a lot of times that will flush out the answer. You just simply ask it a second time, and many people will just give you what they're thinking there. If they're still tricky, sometimes I'll say something like, I'm going to prepare a net sheet, and I'm going to bring some pricing information with me, and I don't want to waste your time with any unrealistic offers that you would even consider. Is there a price you just absolutely have to have? And if the market won't support it, I'll be up front so I don't waste your time. That almost always gets that number out of them. And the last trick in the book on this one, if you have to, it's the last resort, is you might look and see while you're on the phone quickly go to Zillow, see what their estimate is, and then you can say something like this. I was looking here on Zillow, and they said your house is worth, according to them, $484,000. How do you feel about that? And they're going to tell you then if they think that that's a high or low number. So that'll give you a little idea where they're looking. Next question, how much do you owe? Now, this is a super important question in a downtrending market, right? Because they could have refinanced they might have bought it recently and they could be upside down. They could have added a second mortgage and they're upside down. So a good one to ask. If they give you any resistance on it, I usually just say to them, well, I'm going to prepare a net sheet and I'd like to plug all the numbers in so you can see exactly what your check is at closing. And so therefore, how much do you owe on it now? And then they usually tell you. Now, the next question, have you ever thought about selling it yourself? This is a good one to ask with an upswing so that you create doubt. And I like to say, are you planning on listing your home with an agent or have you ever thought about selling it yourself? I would just throw that upswing in there. Have you ever thought about selling it yourself? And shake your head no. Odds are they probably aren't unless you're calling a for sale by owner or an expired, because they wouldn't have called you or set that appointment with you if they were thinking of listing. So make a note on that one so that you are prepared to handle that for sale by owner objection when you get there. Also, sometimes what comes out of that question is they might tell you, no, I'm not prepared to sell it myself, but they reveal that they have somebody that they know that's interested in buying their home. Wouldn't that be good information to know? So that may be something you have to deal with at the presentation. Will you quickly describe your home for me? That's the next question. Will you quickly describe your home for me? This is a great question to reveal their personality style. Now, the driver is going to just tell you, it's got 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and is built in 1977. All right, okay, so very basic to the point. An analytical is going to tell you about every improvement and how much they spent on it and when it was done. So 20 minutes later, you're finally done with the answer to that question. And of course, standard responses from amiables and expressives are going to get super excited about the house, tell you about all the wonderful improvements they've had, how great it is for entertaining and all the parties we've had here, and of course the amiable is going to tell you about how comfortable the home is and how the company enjoys it and the kids have grew up here and all that kind of fun stuff. So great personality reveal. I also like to ask, is there anything else positive or negative that could affect the price? So this will give you insight on often is there something pretty serious that we need to pay attention to? A leaky roof? Is there an issue with the house they don't plan on fixing? Or is there some major improvements that really could add to the value? Are you dealing with a renovated home versus one that's dated? That's usually where this comes up. Helps you do a better market analysis. Next question. Are you planning to do anything else to the home before I start showing it to my buyers? Now, that's not the Mike Ferry script. I got that one from the great Neil Weichel. And the reason I put that in there is it just, again, gives you an idea. Are they ready to list now, or is there something a project that they want to accomplish before it hits the market? Gives you a little better idea on the timing. Plus, it can't hurt with that positive, assumptive language to lead them on like, wow, he's already got buyers or she's got buyers to bring over immediately. Next question. Do you have any questions for me before I arrive? So this is another one that's going to reveal objections. Here they usually hit you up on things like commission, your length of a listing. Whatever they hit you up on here, it's important not to go into objection handling on the phone. You just acknowledge that that's what they want answers to and mention that you're going to go over that first thing when you do the presentation. So let's say they say, how much do you charge on commission? And I'll say, that's a great question. That's really important. So I'm going to make a note here. Let's go over that first thing when we sit down at our presentation. Now, if they're really persistent, I'll say something along the lines of, well, X percent is normal in our area, but commission's negotiable, so let's go over that in detail when we meet. And they almost always say, okay, that's great. Now, another thing that's going to come up here is the next question, is there anyone else involved in the sale? Critical question. Boy, can you waste a lot of time going on what we call one-legged presentations. That's where there's only one spouse there and not the other. You will never get a listing signed. And I don't care if the wife's on the deed and the husband isn't, and she's there and he's not. They're still going to want to consult with the spouse. So at that point, I always make sure I go only at a time when both husband and wife are present. If the time you set does not have the husband and wife present, don't go. Offer to reschedule it for a different time when both parties can be present. Now, occasionally, one party cannot be there because maybe they took a job out of state, they've already moved, they're working remotely, maybe somebody is, out of town for one reason or another, or sick and can't participate in a presentation, and that's fine. At that point, I just like to make it clear, are you the decision maker, and is the other person available by phone during our appointment should we have questions. Moving along, the next question is, it's not a question, it's a statement. I'll be preparing a package of information for you. Could you take a few moments and review it before I arrive? So I guess technically that is a question, but you really want to let them know that you're sending that pre-listing package over, that it's important that they look at it before you meet. And then I like to finish off the script by saying, our meeting will take only 5 to 25 minutes. Is that okay? All right. And then so just letting them know it's going to be a short, keep it tight, brief presentation. So there you go. Now you have a fully pre-qualified appointment. And what's the benefit of that? Well, first off, your only asset is your time. So if you're going on presentations where odds are very low or maybe impossible that you're going to get the listing, why on earth are you wasting your time doing that when you could be going on either setting more appointments by prospecting or going on more qualified appointments instead? It also lets the seller know that you are a professional. Who else pre-qualifies? Pilots doing a checklist before the plane takes off. Doctors and with their nurses getting the blood pressure and having you fill out 1 million forms before they sit down with you in the examining room. These are examples of professionals that pre-qualify. If you're dealing with an attorney, they're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions before taking on or preparing your case. So if you want to put yourself in the league of a true professional and have the seller understand and feel that you are different than all the other agents they talk to, none of the other agents are pre-qualifying. They're just going, but you are the only one to take time, ask them questions about their situation, and that's going to cause you to stand out. Now, you know the objections, of course, ahead of time because you've done the pre-qual script. So you can be prepared. You can practice your for sale by owner objection. You can bring the track records of the agents that you're up against to blow them out of the water. You can be prepared for the commission objection or the length of listing objection. Practice it, rehearse it, write down about 2 or 3 different ways you can handle it. So if it even comes up at the presentation, many times those objections completely disappear, by the way, you will be ready for them. And by answering them quickly and confidently, you will overcome them and get the listing. And that's the answer to the next reason you want to pre-qual, and that is confidence. Knowing where you're going or why you're going there, that they're ready to do business, knowing that all the details of it will give you more confidence than any of the other realtors that they're going in to interview. So that's going to set you heads and tails above the competition. And then the last thing is your own ratios will improve. If you're getting 5 out of 10 presentations you go on by pre-qualifying, you should instantly see that jump up to probably a 7 out of 10. So when you get really good with a combination of a great presentation and strong pre-qualifying, it's not unusual for agents to have 8 to 9 out of 10 presentations they get the listing. So if you can imagine, for every 10 appointments you set, if you can change that 5 out of 10 to a 6, 7, or 8, or even a 9, how the same amount of time spent is going to just multiply your income, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So really exciting stuff. A lot of great reasons to do the pre-qual. It's something you should never skip on going on a presentation ever again. It is literally better for you to not go on an appointment at all than go on an unqualified appointment. So thanks so much for listening, and go get that listing. It's ready for you.